Okay, everyone, welcome to the March 2019 Division of Drinking Water webinar for our water operators. Today we've got quite a few things to go over. It's just kind of a, I don't know, just a mix of a bunch of different topics. So hopefully we're hitting something in our topics today that are pertinent to you. And there will be a quiz at the end, but the quiz link probably won't be posted for the next 24 to 48 hours. So be patient with us on that, but we will get the link posted. So I'm Rachel Cassidy, and I manage the rules section here at the division. And the things that we wanted to talk about today are seasonal startup procedures and your chem sampling for 2019. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about IPS 2020 and just, I don't know. If you have comments, questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat and I'll try to address those as well. So reminders, we've got some OPSERT training coming up in North Salt Lake for rural water. If you need somebody that needs to get certified, that's a good opportunity. The rules training with rural water on April 16th in Delta is coming up. WaterLink portal account. If you don't have a portal account, we did our entire webinar in January on this, and the whole idea is that you want access to more information about your water system in WaterLink, and it will allow you to see the inventory report for your system. The portal account will let you also upload documents such as your sampling site plan, public notice, IPS fixes. You really want this portal account. So if you don't have one, get one. And if you want information on how to get one, please go to our website and just walk through the January webinar. It's about 20, 30 minutes on how to get that set up. Inventory report and WaterLink. We've had a lot of comments. Many water system operators have noticed that your inventory report and WaterLink is no longer available to the public and to just any person who is checking WaterLink. That happened in early February, and it's not going to change. So if you do want access to your inventory report and WaterLink, you do need to get that WaterLink portal account set up so that you can get access to that. And if anybody working with your system needs access to that inventory report, they also will have to get approved as a WaterLink portal account user for your particular system. The other thing that we have going on is we are just beginning the rulemaking process for the changes to the IPS rule. We're calling the IPS 2020. And of course, there's an old webinar about this that we did back in August that's on the website, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit here today because it's coming up. So we're changing the points. We're not changing the thresholds. The thresholds for going to a not approved rating stay the same. And you'll see that in that bottom bullet right there. But we are changing the points, and these are the proposed. This is the proposed framework, and this is, you know, now's the chance as we start the rulemaking process. There'll be open public comment period. You'll want to pay attention to that, and we'll let you know. We'll keep you posted when that happens. But in the meantime, we can still get your comments on our IPS website, which I'll show you in a second. But this is just to give you an idea on how we're trying to streamline the points. You probably notice on your IPS report that currently some of the items will have 2 points or 7 points or 35 points. They're kind of all over the place with the current point framework, and they haven't changed significantly since the rule was enacted in 1996. So we're kind of going through an entire reboot of the rule. We're aligning it better with EPA's point system. They have a point system where they track deficiencies and violations. Well, mostly violations, deficiencies that turn into violations. But this new proposed framework will better align with EPA, and it will hopefully highlight the things that are important to fix, which we call significant deficiencies. So one thing you want to do is check your IPS report constantly. And by constantly, I would at least check it once a month, no question. If you're not checking it once a month, you're really out of the loop. And you've got to just make it a habit. Double check that IPS report and make sure that it's the same as what you think it should be. Things you want to look for the total points, the rating, the date that the rating was applied. And then in the physical facility points, look for anything labeled SIG. That means significant deficiency. And anything that is a significant deficiency, if it's not fixed within a certain time frame, it turns into a violation. And if that violation gets reported to EPA, which we report every 6 weeks, we just reported on Friday, then we start to have to look at enforcement for that water system. So it's just bad to let anything in the physical facility section that's labeled significant linger. You don't want those to linger on the report. And then also pay attention to your compliance schedules at the bottom. This is where we show extra requirements such as your consumer confidence report, lead copper, consumer notification. All of those requirements are shown there. So let me show you a quick IPS report. So this is for an inactive water system down in Millard County. It's non-public, so I feel comfortable showing the information. I am logged in as a Division of Drinking Water user, but this is what you'll see when you pull up your water system IPS report. The first thing that you see is the physical facility points, which is anything that's found during an inspection, a sanitary survey, a level 2 assessment, an emergency, anything that needs to be actually fixed in the water system infrastructure, it'll show up here. So where do you see the SIG for significant deficiency? You have to view the details, and you can do that one of two ways. You can click hide all details and it'll toggle back and forth, or you can come one by one and just view details. So I just want to view details actually for both of them. And it's the severity that I'm talking about. So severity, REC is recommended, MIN, is minor. And if one of these were to be SIG, then that's a significant deficiency. And those you want to pay attention to, fix. So you have to do a couple things. First, you have to fix it. Then you need to certify to the division that you did fix it so that it can be removed from this report. So make sure once it is fixed, you're documenting that, taking pictures, submit those to Jennifer Yee through the online form. But make sure if it's significant, it's something that you have prioritized as an important fix. So those are physical facility points. If you have a significant deficiency and it is on there for more than 120 days for a groundwater system and it hasn't been fixed, then it will show up as a significant deficiency violation as well. So you'll have points assessed here and points assessed here. And then it goes into failure to sample or quality violations for lead copper, failure to sample or quality violations for chems, operator certification information, water use report violations. Here's that compliance schedule section that I talked about. So you can see this water system was active about 6-7 years ago, and they were required to submit their CCR. A lot of active water systems right now will see submit consumer confidence report and submit CCR certification letter. And the due dates will be July 1st, 2019, October 1st, 2019. If you are a community system, you will see these two items on your IPS compliance schedules. And as long as you meet those due dates, then it's not then you're fine. There's no issues, there's no violations. And then consumer confidence report violations will show up here if you fail to get these consumer confidence reports done in time. Again, consumer confidence reports are just for community systems, but other things can show up in compliance schedules. Any sort of requirement that we've given the water system to comply with in a certain time frame will show up in this section. So it's important that you're familiar with this part of your IPS report. What else did I want to say? Oh, good news. Guess what, everyone? I'm getting a new section to the IPS report. Sometime next week, down here at the very bottom, we'll also show public notice violations. So that's exciting. If you have a public notice violation, which only probably, let me think, I just checked, there's maybe 4 water systems that have a public notice violation. That'll show up at the very bottom. If you don't have violations in that section, it'll show up like this. It'll just kind of show up blank. Anyway, IPS reports, check them. Make sure that they are what you think they should be. Okay, so let's talk about seasonal startup. So seasonal startup is a new thing as of 3 years ago. It started with the revised total coliform rule on April 1st, 2016. This is the actual rule itself. Basically what it is it's just if you're a seasonal system, well, not you personally, but if you work with a seasonal system, you have to go through startup procedures and submit those, certify those to the division before serving the public as you start up for the season. If a water system that is seasonal that fails to do the startup procedures gets 50 IPS points, which is really bad. So check your IPS report and make sure you don't have that violation on there. And if you do, let's try to clear it up as soon as we can. And the reason, of course, that we're talking about this now is that a lot of water systems are getting ready to start up. It's the start of the spring and summer season. So a lot of water systems need to pay attention to this requirement and make sure you do it properly. So how do you first tell if your water system is seasonal? Pull up WaterLink, put your water system information in the search bar, and then you look at the operating period right here. If the operating period is 1/1 to 12/31, that means your system is year round and your system is not required to do the seasonal startup. If the operating period is anything different, February 1st to the end of November, that's a seasonal system. So these seasonal systems will have a compliance schedule in the IPS report and also the monitoring schedule that says that you have to do the seasonal startup procedures, and the date should coincide with the date of opening that we have listed. So here's a water system that opened May 1st, 2017. So the compliance schedule said RTCR seasonal startup procedures due when the water system opens. So that's how those are 2 places in WaterLink where you can tell if we are requiring the water system to report those seasonal startup procedures. So that's how you know if you're in this camp. So how do you do it? This is what you have to do. First of all, you need to keep us posted on the start dates and end dates, but most importantly, the start dates. They really matter, because if you are going to delay your start, or you're starting just a tiny bit late, or you're opening early, it doesn't matter. If those dates that you're opening are different, we need to know about it. And you can just submit an email to ddwreports@utah.gov, but you need to let us know. And the reason for this is, if you're going to open on April 1st, that's the date. If we have April 1st here, but because of heavy snowpack or other reasons, you need to delay the start to June 1st, then you're likely your water system's going to get a violation, because if we don't hear anything, then we assume that the water system just didn't bother with seasonal startup and opened anyway, in which case the water system gets a violation, which is bad. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that these dates are correct, and they change year to year for many water systems, which is fine. There's no violation for changing your startup dates. It's just when you don't notify us that those dates have changed that we run into trouble. So make sure that those dates are correct and just keep us posted. Again, our email is ddwreports@utah.gov. So then this is what you have to do. You have to certify. We have an online form I'll show you, which is the best method, but you have to certify to us that you have completed the seasonal startup procedures. So what you want to put in on the form is, of course, the person's name who did the seasonal startup procedures, the system number and name, the information, and then you do an inspection of the system. So we're looking for your notes on the inspection, things that you noticed, any items that you had to take care of, fixes that you made. This is like a free form text area, so you can just give us your inspection notes. And then most water systems that are seasonal startup need to disinfect. So we need the details on that disinfection, what type of disinfectant was used, Did you get a residual? And then flushing, if the flushing was unidirectional, how long was the flushing for? Did you flush? And then you also certify on the form that you took, this is required. You have to take an investigative coliform bacteria sample. We need to know that you took that investigative. We need to know the results. We need to know the lab, and we need to know the lab number for that investigative sample. So let me walk you through a timeline on this. If your water system, your seasonal water system starts on April 1st of this year, so this is the week that you're going to go through and do your inspection, your disinfection, your flush, and you're going to take that investigative sample this week. It comes back satisfactory, so you're ready to start up. So you start up April 1st, and then after you start up and after these requirements are done, then during the month of April, you take your monthly routine for April. So we need that investigative prior to startup, and then we need your regular routine after. So we do realize that the real world is quite different. Most water systems aren't going to start up exactly on the 1st of that month. So let's say you're starting up April 10th. Well, for database reasons, I'm still going to list that date as April 1st. But if you take your investigative sample on April 7th, you get the satisfactory results. Then you start up on the 10th, and then later you take your routine after you start up in the month of April. So what I'm saying is you can't use that investigative sample as your monthly routine. That's not allowed. It's investigative. It's just for seasonal startup procedures. What happens if that investigative sample comes back unsatisfactory? Well, then we need to fix the problem and address it. You need to have a satisfactory investigative coliform bacteria sample before opening to the public. So then on the form, you also put notes on your yearly or quarterly nitrate, like when you're going to take it. And I see some questions are coming through. I'll address those towards the end. But still, please type in your questions. I'll answer them when I'm done talking about all this stuff. Okay, so the seasonal startup form, let me take you to the form online. So here's our website. You go to drinkingwater.utah.gov and it takes you here. This is kind of a cool tool. If you have people that want to know what water system serves me, you click here, you put in your address, and it will take you to the water system that serves you in WaterLink. So anywho, we're looking for forms. So you click on forms, and voila, very first form is the seasonal startup form. So I just did all my startup procedures. I'm going to fake enter this for you. So I work for a test system. That's a test system. Don't use that number. That's just for me. Oh, my name, the system name. Putting your system name. Comments on your inspection. I would say inspection done. I did it yesterday. Notes, words, things I fixed, etc. Free form again. And then here you put in, and the asterisk in red means it's a required section. So system disinfection is required. You choose yes, no, or not applicable that you disinfected. If you did disinfect, what method did you use? I'm going to say tablet. Did you flush the system? Yes or no? I'm going to say yes. Was it unidirectional? Yes is a good answer for that. Investigative coliform sample collected. Click yes. That's required to be yes. And then you pick the laboratory that you used. Just pick other. Test lab. And then here's the lab number. So I don't know, some of the lab numbers are really funky. So that's the lab number of the investigative sample in case we need to look it up or you need to look it up. Results were absent, which is satisfactory, or present, which is unsatisfactory. This is bad, this is good. So absent. Did you take your annual nitrate sample yet? Yes or no. It doesn't matter on this one. You can do that as you do the startup procedures, or you can wait and do it later while the system is active. I'm going to say no because it's pretty typical that water systems will wait a little bit on that. So if you have taken your nitrates, when did you take them? And if not, when do you anticipate doing so? I'm going to say I'm going to take them July 1st. And I project I'm going to open my system middle of April. My name is Rachel. I work for DDW, but you will put in the water system here, your position, president of water system or operator, doesn't matter. We're not picky about this. We just want you to fill it in, your email address, your phone number, you certify yes, and then you click submit. And then your response has been recorded. So then you should receive an email saying that we received your seasonal startup notification. If you want something more from that, maybe your management requires something more, just let us know. So that's how you complete your seasonal startup. It's not too bad, hopefully, I think. So just make sure we're aware of the dates and that you're able to fill in that form. So here's that form online. Another picture of the form. So that's seasonal startup, pretty cut and dry. But if you do run into issues, maybe your water system has experienced heavy snowpack and you might be dealing with flooding and you need some extra help. We have technical staff here, and there's also associations like RCAC, AWWA, and Rural Water, local health departments. We're all willing to come out and help make sure that you have a successful startup and some clean samples prior to serving the public. Okay, chemical sampling. So I wanted to talk about chemical sampling today because 2019 is the end of a 9-year period for chemical sampling. So water systems, PWS stands for public water systems. So public water systems, you are required to keep copies of your chem samples for 10 years and report the data to the division within 40 days of receipt. Those are your records requirements. So chem samples are usually taken at the entry point to the distribution system. So that's either at the well or at the spring, or maybe you have wells and springs that combine before serving any customers at a storage tank or something. So maybe you have an approved sampling station for those chem samples. And that's where we call grouping. So if you have approved grouping, it'll show up as an SS site, a sample station site, on your monitoring schedule. So these are the things that are required for chem samples, and some are not all. It depends on the system type, the water type, population served, depends on waivers and things like that. So just look up in WaterLink in your monitoring schedule. I'll show you your monitoring schedule. So you click on water monitoring, and all of your chem sampling station will show chem samples, your sources in your sampling stations. Maybe you sample post-treatment at the entry point to the distribution system. It'll show up here in monitoring requirements by facility. That's where your chem samples will show up. So that's where you check due dates and things like that. So this is the reason why I wanted to go over this today. And that is because we use this standardized monitoring framework, which means that the samples are for chemical samples taken at the entry point to the distribution system or the source are not based on the date last sampled. They're in periods that you see here that we've adopted from EPA. So we go in periods, compliance periods, and compliance cycles. So the compliance cycle that we're in the third compliance cycle that started January 1st, 2011, and it ends this year. That means if you have a sample, like for asbestos or inorganics and metals that's due once every 9 years, it should be taken by the end of the year. So the purpose in me talking to you about this today is please don't wait until November. Don't overwhelm the laboratories. Please plan out and make sure that you meet this 2019 December 31st, 2019 end date for your yearly, once every 3 year, once every 6 year, and once every 9 year chem sampling. Now, this framework, these cycles and periods do not apply to disinfection byproducts and lead and copper. Those next sample due dates are based off of the date last sampled. So if you sampled for lead and copper in 2016 and it's due every 3 years, then you have to take that sample again in 2019. If you are required to sample for disinfection byproducts every 3 years and you last sampled in 2017, the next sample is due exactly 3 years later in 2020. So please be aware that these compliance periods that I'm talking about, this standardized framework, which is this little brown timeline, does not apply to DBPs or lead copper, but it does apply to the chemical sampling at the source. So if your well has asbestos, inorganics and metals, nitrate and or nitrite, sulfate, which is typically part of the inorganics and metals group, VOCs, pesticides, or RADs due either once every 3 years or once every 9 years, check WaterLink, check your monitoring schedule, because the date it's due is going to be December 31st, 2019. If you have taken the sample, then it will show the next compliance period as the next due date. You think of it as like buckets. You have to sample anytime during this time period. So if you have inorganics and metals due every 3 years, maybe you took one in 2015, can you take the next one in 2019 and still be in compliance? The answer is yes. Can you take it in 2014 and then wait, clear until 2019 and still be in compliance? Yes, you can. Just make sure that you are taking those samples during those required time periods. So as you can see, they just apply to every 3 year, 6 year, and 9 year sampling. So pay attention. The whole purpose of this is we do not want to overwhelm the laboratories, and we want to make sure that you're getting your samples taken hopefully sooner rather than later. The other thing to keep in mind is that we base compliance off of the date sampled. So if you do have to wait for whatever reasons until December 30th to take your sample, that's fine. As long as we get copies of the data by January 10th, you should be fine. It's not a violation as long as you sample during that time frame. So labeling the chain of custody form is incredibly important. You want to sample at the point that's listed in WaterLink. If it's an entry point, a sample station, it'll show up as an SS. Treatment plant effluent will show up as a TP, and a source location will show up as a WS. And let me show you where that shows up, actually. It's going to show up right in here, and it'll show the ID number is that number. So you want that number to be the number that you put on the chain of custody form. So WS001, make sure that's on the chain of custody form. Oh, here it is right here. SS227, there's a source, there's another well. The sampling station will have a name with numbers of the sources that are involved. And then I whited out the names of these particular source locations for privacy. But you just want to make sure that you're putting in the ID number and the name in that chain of custody form so that the data can go to the correct place. The reason that we really want these ID numbers on there is because we're getting data more and more electronically. And in order for that to happen correctly, we need those. The laboratory and the division needs those ID numbers on your chain of custody form. So just make sure you know that it's the water system's responsibility to get us the results. We don't send violation letters to laboratories. We don't regulate the labs. So if you have an agreement with your laboratory that they're going to send us the data, make sure that you double check that. Please be aware that most of our nitrate violations that we sent out at the end of 2016 the reason for the violation for 40% of those is that we didn't get the data, but the samples were taken. So just make sure that that last step, that the division gets a copy of that data is completed. If your source or your system is seasonal, it's important to sample only during that operating period. We don't require that you turn on a well in order to take a sample. If a well is not in use, then the chemical sampling is not required, but you need to let us know. And then just beware, make sure you're checking your monitoring schedule. And then also you need to know when we check for violations. We check for violations 10 days after the end of each monitoring period. So the end of the year, any yearly samples we'll be checking for compliance after January 10th, and we're required to get notices of violation out in the mail sometime around January 20th. Well, what if you have a quarterly sample? What if you have a sample that's due quarterly, like say for RADS, it's due first quarter 2019. It's our job to start looking for failure to sample violations after close of business on April 10th. So just be aware of our timeframes there. And if you did take the sample, RAD samples take longer to get to us. If you did take the sample, but it's going to take a while for the data to come through, then get us a chain of custody form and talk to us and let us know that the sample was taken. Here's the chain of custody, proof that it was taken, paid for, all of that, and that we're just waiting on the data. And in those cases, we will hold a notice of violation letter. So these are the people in the rules section. All the contact information. I'm the rules section manager, so let me know if you have any questions. Email is the best way to get hold of me, but you can also text me at that number. Okay, gonna wrap up really quick. I got a couple of questions on the chat. Let's see. One gentleman says that this is his first webinar. How do you verify that you get your CEUs? You can just check your OpCert report on WaterLink, which would be in public. You can check your CEUs. Let's check my CEUs. Let's see how I'm doing. You can just get your certification and your required CEUs. You can check it right there. So you probably didn't catch that, but that's in the public facing tab for WaterLink. Okay, another question. There's a link in the description. Oh yeah, sorry. There's a response to Bryson. Another question about the portal accounts. When I try to make a portal account, it wants me to create a utah.gov account, but I have a utah.gov. Oh, this gentleman already has a utah.gov account already. How do you make the account? How do you make it see the account you already have? You know what, Ed? I have no idea. Call me or send me an email and let's work on that one offline. But the portal account is really important. These are the instructions on how to go through and do it. You know what, Ed? I would try to just go to step 2. And since you already have a utah.gov account, just go to step 2 and log in at this link. Go ahead and log in. And then because I'm already logged in, it's not going to show you where it's going to take you, but it'll hopefully walk you through after step 2. So these are the portal accounts that you want to get. So I'm going to show you, what's the last thing I want to show you? I'm going to show you our webinars. So our webinars are here on the main page. Here's the January webinar on how to get a WaterLink portal account. So you want to pay attention to that. But if you just want to look at all of our monthly webinars, I think you just click here. Or I think this is going to take you to all of them. There used to be a link here, you guys. Anyway, let's click on here. Monthly webinars. So here's our monthly webinar for February, January. We try to do them at the end of the month. Last Monday of every month. So we'll be back at the end of April to do another webinar. And hopefully if you're a seasonal system, that made sense and you're gonna get your form filled out. Here's the form again online. And if you have any questions, of course, please always get in touch and hope you have a great Monday. Thanks to everybody for participating in the webinar. Bye.